Today is finally the day as the Sixers will face off with the Miami Heat, looking to earn the chance to face the New York Knicks in the actual playoffs, climb out of the play-in tournament, and keep that number 7 seed. And I think if you tuned into any videos by now, you can see that my optimism is pretty high regarding the Sixers team. In this video, I want to break down exactly why I'm not afraid of this Heat team. And I've kind of rattled this around a lot. I know we think about the demons of past Sixers teams and the zombie Heat that are capable of waking up come playoff time. But I kind of decided that I just need to listen to my eyes here, that I have to look at what's in front of me, the version of this Heat team that we have seen all playoffs, and if I have to go down with the ship because of this, then so be it. But at this point in time, I don't consider this Heat team a threat, and I do want to break down why. But now, before I dive fully into it, I want to acknowledge the fear that it does strike, and shout out to my guy RB Philly Take, kind of tweeting this out here, saying the Sixers are the better team than the Heat. There's no question about that. However, I do have some concerns. Number one, the Heat have prior experience of the play-in. Number two, Spo is a mastermind. I'd expect him to throw a lot of looks at Joel and make others beat them all game long. Number three, Jimmy Butler seems to love these moments, especially against the Sixers. Now, these are all fair takes here, and I think a good portion of why people are nervous about this specific matchup. But once again, I want to look at this specific Heat team. Now, I also did a nice breakdown with RB, DJ Eastwood, and Romp that you guys can check out on each of those channels, as well as Pick Swap Media. That will be streaming on Sixers Digest moving forward. That ran into a couple tech issues that'll be fixed moving forward, but there will be a couple roundtable opportunities that we plan on getting into throughout the playoffs. But for now, to give you the short version of why I don't think this Heat team is legit, let's dive into the stats. So I want to start off with their stats as a team here. That overall on the season, these again, as a team overall, 12th in three-point percentage, 22nd in field goal percentage overall. They get to the line at the 13th best rate, just 26th in total rebounding and 26th in offensive rebounding, which I think is very important for this Sixers team. The Heat are also 18th in assists, 30th in blocks. They do only turn the ball over at the 6th best rate, but they are 26th in scoring as a team. Dive into some more advanced stats here. That 21st in offensive rating here, 29th in pace. They are 14th in three-point attempt rate, 20th in effective field goal percentage, 26th in offensive rebounding percentage. They do get to the free throw line at the 6th best rate, and defensively, that is where this team will shine, that they do hold opponents to the 13th best field goal percentage, forced turnovers the 8th best rate, defensive rebound at the 2nd best rate, so don't expect a lot of second chances for this Sixers team. But when you dive through the picture in its entirety, it's a whole lot of middle of the pack, that there aren't any particular area where this team is elite. They're far better on the defensive side of the ball. That is their identity as a team, but there isn't anywhere that when I look at the numbers that screams this is a massive disadvantage to the Sixers. And the Sixers are not a perfect basketball team. They have their holes, and rebounding is probably at the forefront of my mind for a concern, but the Heat are not quite built to be a team specifically capable of taking advantage from that based on the data and the track record that they have shown this season. And I also like to point out that when all the discussion about Joel Embiid being injured, all the other injury concerns regarding the Sixers, we got a bit of surprising news leading into this matchup as the Miami Heat just ruled out Terry Rozier with a neck injury for the play-in tournament. Now, Duncan Robinson is probable and Kevin Love will be available, but that Terry Rozier injury is something worth noting. That Rozier is a guy that was obviously the midseason acquisition. They traded Kyle Lowry for Terry Rozier. That resulted in Lowry ultimately being bought out by the Charlotte Hornets, then finding his way to Philadelphia. And by the way, you better expect there to be a chip on Kyle Lowry's shoulder against this Heat team. It definitely felt like he had a little bit of an extra gear in him when they faced off the Heat for that final regular season win. I expect the exact same energy and effort from him in tonight's game against Miami. And frankly, I'm feeling pretty good about Lowry being a significant part of this team, that he has far left in the tank than I gave him credit leading up to, and I do think that he's going to carry that throughout this playoff run. And the Heat being without Rozier, that has to hurt a little bit. That's been a guy that they've been operating a good portion of their offense through, that he's a little bit of the Jimmy Butler light as far as getting buckets down the stretch, being able to create his own. And they have other guys as well, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, even Jaime Jaquez has his moments, and Bam Adebayo, of course. But I do think that's a notable hit to their team and something more than just brushing over. And as is always kind of the conversation when we talk about this matchup and this Sixers team as a whole, it's about what Philadelphia does. It's about them playing their best basketball. And the largest reason why I'm excited about that is for the two all-stars that are on this team. And to dive into specifically how they've looked against the Miami Heat this year, that Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid form one of the deadliest guard center duos in the league. They average a combined 60.6 points per game, working well off a pick and pop and pick and roll. Maxey enjoyed facing Miami this season, scoring 27.3 points per contest, including three straight 30-point performances. And I do think Maxey is the great equalizer in this particular matchup. For starters, I just mentioned a guy like Tyler Hero. Tyler Hero cannot guard Tyrese Maxey by any means. And anytime that is the matchup, anytime that he's on the court at all, you should be doing everything possible to get a switch, create that, and let Maxey barbecue chicken that man. I also think because that is in the equation and the Heat are absolutely going to be aware of it, that's the biggest critique in Tyler Hero's game, and frankly why he hasn't seemed to become as much of an Eric Spoelstra guy as really his talent would indicate. Injuries have also absolutely played a role as he's missed some time, but they do switch to a lot of zone defense to kind of make him look more passable. Duncan Robinson is another guy who does not shine on the defensive end, but is able to hold himself in his zone. The counter that I expect Nick Nurse and the Sixers to roll out is Buddy Hield, and that's why you have these type of offseason weapons. Buddy has struggled of late, but he's coming off a pretty impressive performance in the final game of the season, and what Buddy Hield has continued to do throughout his Sixers tenure and really throughout his NBA career is he's a guy who's just about automatic when it comes to open shots. So if you're going to throw a zone defense at the Sixers team, Buddy Hield is the counter there. It feels like Nick Nurse's deck is stacked with all these options, all these moves that he can go back and forth on depending what Eric Spoelstra does. And that is another driving force for optimism for the Sixers team, is they do have a championship caliber coach for the first time in Joel Embiid's tenure. And I get it, Doc Rivers does technically have a ring on his finger, but we're watching the Milwaukee Bucks fall apart, and you can check out last night's video for my full thoughts on Doc and ultimately him letting the Sixers down once again, this time in a Milwaukee Bucks uniform or polo, whatever you want to call it there. But the bottom line is, Nick Nurse is a guy that I do feel the Sixers have a tactical advantage on a night in and night out standpoint. And also I wanted to shout out my guy RB once again, as he did have this tweet going pretty viral, actually on just about all social medias, but he did tweet this out here saying that if the Sixers beat the Heat on Wednesday and Tobias Harris yells, "Yes, me over Jimmy," as he runs back into the locker room, I will call him one of the greatest Sixers of all time. This, I don't want to say it's a Tobias Harris legacy game, but what this will be is a measuring stick matchup for the foreseeable future for Tobias. On an individual standpoint, we're finally at the end of that seemingly 20-year contract that he signed, that it feels like he's been here for the entirety of this franchise. But the bottom line is he's setting his market from a free agent standpoint. So he has everything to play for. And on the Sixers side of things, we're past the point of playing for feelings. That this is now the time where Nick Nurse should yank that man off the floor if he's not playing up to an adequate level. And I do think there's a much more legitimate chance of that happening. I'm not saying he won't be the regular starter throughout this playoff stretch. I think that's just about set in stone. That will be the case. But what I do trust Nick Nurse to do is every part of the kind of struggles in the game plan this season, it was about getting the best version of Tobias Harris for this stretch. So if they were to bench him a couple months ago during the shorthanded period where he was really playing his worst ball, it wasn't something that would get him towards playing his best at this time. It was about getting him in the right mindset, and I do think that's why the leash was as long as it was. But now, there's no longer time for that. That now it is based on making the proper decisions. We have seen Nurse at time cut down his minutes, particularly in closing lineups, and particularly in a couple matchups that stand out. The Boston Celtics was one where Harris looked bad, and I know he kind of didn't put him back in until the final 2 minutes. I thought he was going to leave him out of the closing lineup in its entirety. But again, it is on Nick Nurse to make these tough decisions. So I do think there's a lot on the line for Tobias Harris. But for the man that he would be yelling at right there, Jimmy Butler, he really has been a guy responsible for carrying this Heat franchise. That in last year's run to the finals, it was Jimmy Butler backpacking that team past the Milwaukee Bucks and deep into that playoff. I don't know if he's ready for that this year. And he is a guy who's still getting up there in age, who's another year older this year, and I know the playoff Jimmy phrases and all that, but I just don't see the same athletic pop in his game that I have in years past. The appeal of Jimmy Butler as a basketball player is he's about the perfect combination of a player who possesses all these raw physical skills, the strength, the athleticism, the ability to muscle his way to his spots, while still having this basketball, suave to him, that he can put the ball on the floor. He's capable of going off the dribble, having a bit of a post move, that spin move. He's got like this balance in his game. If you lose a little bit of that athleticism, I don't think he's skilled enough as a basketball player to overcome that. That I think there will be guys that can put up a fight. And Kyle Lowry, once again, did a terrific job defending Jimmy Butler during that most recent matchup. We have guys like Kelly Oubre. While Jimmy Butler may have the strength advantage and, will have his way on occasion, I guarantee Kelly's not going to roll over and quit. And then right back in the ball in Tobias Harris's court, that if you hear those words that Jimmy has muttered, and believe me, they've been loud and clear to everyone on the internet, everyone in that locker room, well, it's time to respond. This is your opportunity to prove that wrong. And if he does have this successful playoff run, I will take back a great portion of what I said about Tobias Harris, and I think the rest of the Sixers fan base will follow along suit. But for now, it all starts with one matchup against the Miami Heat. I cannot wait to see them check rock, play ball, and see how things play out. But I do want to get a vibe check from you guys in the comments before this game starts. Are you as confident in me that the Sixers do get the job done tomorrow? Do you think that this will be a seamless step through the play-in tournament and onto the New York Knicks? Let me know below. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button, dropping a like, and keep this Sixers Digest family growing. Appreciate each and every one of you, and talk next time. Peace.